My name is James Posey. I've been in this community for over 40 years. I'm actually from Indiana, Indianapolis, Indiana, and born in 1946. So that makes me 75. I have a birthday coming up pretty soon. Well, it's kind of a long story. I was in the military. I went to Vietnam, and when I got out of the service back in the 70s, I came through Fort Lewis and the air base up there in Seattle, and it was refreshing to see all this nature and everything. So I really enjoyed that. So I decided at some point I would try to make my way back up this way, and I eventually did. I've done a lot of things. I was a drug and alcohol treatment counselor at Walla Walla State Penitentiary way back when. I worked for the Forest Service. I was a personnel management type guy, HR. All these organizations have glass ceilings for Black people. You get to a point where you think you're going to be able to progress in those systems, but you soon find out it's rigged for somebody else that don't look like you. And I was frustrated with those organizations, and I eventually felt like entrepreneurial kinds of things is what I really would want to do. Now, you asked me why this particular construction. As a young person, I worked with my grandfather, who was basically a person who came from the South, went to Indianapolis, and formed his own company. It had to do with the experiences with my grandfather and working around all the equipment. He had his own route. That's my role model, is my grandfather. So I was working over at the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest when I felt the glass ceiling bumping me in the head. So I decided to take my little retirement, go out and buy me some equipment, and actually bought an old dump truck. It was a gas hog, an old Ford, and it was so raggedy it had a sway back in it, and and I dubbed that company called Workhorse, because the truck looked like it had been worked to death. In fact, that atrium at Legacy Hospital was the first project I worked on with that truck. I helped dig that atrium out. I said to myself, how hard could it be to get a dump truck, move dirt, be in construction? Shouldn't be a challenge, but it turned out it was a real challenge. I did some foolish things. I ran for mayor. I opened a deli, coffee shop. That was back when there was no wireless. People were coming in to use the computers, do their laundry, get a latte, and kind of hang out. So it was quite a little adventure way back then, and you had to get a public utilities license in order to have a company and do trucking. And all the white guys had the license. Black people couldn't get in. There was one black guy that had a license. That was Rockin' Road. I worked under him. So you were basically a third-class citizen trying to do business in the construction industry back then. I felt a need to get the folk organized, and some of the people who had been struggling, and put together. I'm the founder of the National Association of Minority Contractors local chapter. I founded that back in the 1997, something like that, I forget. There is some evolution, there is some progress being made, but all the avenues, this economic avenue is the one that's the most challenging, because this is where power and influence is exercised, and Black people have very little power and influence in the town. Once you become a businessman and you have some economic capacity, then you can kind of hire your people, you can kind of change the narrative about being on various systems and so forth. And so I was interested in building capacity to help our people, the Black community, and the people that look like me, have a chance at being, having a quality of life. For example, I'll give you an example, the low bid process. For many years, you had to bid against white guys who already had a head start on the bidding process. They had all the numbers, they had all the equipment. You couldn't compete with those guys to be able to have an entree into this construction industry. We kind of broke down some of the barriers. For example, TriMed, when we did the light rail, interstate light rail, basically it was a catalyst to get most of the Black contractors who were doing major construction work came as a result of that TriMed thing. And TriMed likes to boast about how they were in the forefront of all that, but behind the scenes, we wound up suing TriMed. We protested them. We had to almost lay down on the rails to prevent them from going to the Hillsborough because they were not interested in changing dynamics. They brought in a so-called minority from out of Colorado to take the minority situation, so they weren't trying to do anything local. So it was an uphill climb, and it was a day-to-day fight with TriMed. Now they're the model for how we do stuff, and they finally figured out that if they wanted to continue doing business in Portland, they didn't need the agitation from people like me. We were kind of a civil rights entity within itself here locally, trying to move these programs, and we're still fighting. My major accomplishment is Jeff Moreland. I passed most of my stuff on to Jeff, and he's picked up the mantle, the baton, and doing an excellent job. My advice to black men, black people: claim your destiny. Don't let anybody deter you. In America, you can do anything you want to do. Cut the TV off, rechannel your energies, educate yourself. Make sure that when you're in a free society, you use all those freedoms to empower yourself. And that's what I would tell young people. Don't let anybody deny who you are. Love yourself, love your people, and work hard every day.